Hey everyone, welcome back to the DJ Sessions presents the virtual sessions. I'm your host Darren, and right now I'm sitting in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington, and my guest today coming in all the way from NYC is none other than Jesse Cannon. Jesse, how you doing today?
I'm all great. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the DJ Sessions. It's always a pleasure when I have another podcaster or somebody who understands podcasting, from just the last 2 years, because you've been doing podcasting for a while now, and you also have a very large musical background. But I mean, some of the podcasts that you produce, the New Abnormal, Don't Let This Flop for Rolling Stone magazine. I mean, the New Abnormal alone is one of Apple's top 100 podcasts all time. I was listening to a little bit about it before. What got you started into the whole business of podcasting?
So it's funny enough, is a teenager asked me to do a podcast with him, but I knew he was a really brilliant person. He used to edit this website, Property of Zach, that was like a Tumblr blog that was breaking a lot of news in the punk indie emo world. Zach went on to manage humongous bands like Brand New, Cave Town, Chloe Morondo, all acts that are, getting gold records now. I knew he was brilliant, but he was like, well, let's talk music, business, and tech every week. And I was like, yeah, we should do that. And so we did that, and it was crazy. Like, we shot up the music charts and we're like doing really well. But then Zach's career took off, and then I took over it myself. I produced some other podcasts, and then eventually Atlantic Records called and had me produce a bunch for them. And then they shut down their department temporarily when the pandemic hit. And then I started working at the Daily Beast. And since then, I've picked up, I do oversee 11 different podcasts. And it's just like, it's a fun new day job because, after 20 years of dealing with musicians, podcasters, they still have their finickiness, but it's not quite musicians level of finicky and neediness. And like when they mess up and like miss a taping, it's because like a kid is hurt. Whereas like, we know with musicians, it's like you mess up, you don't show up. It was a long night with a lot of white lines around you.
I wonder if that ever happens in the podcast world.
A lot more rare.
But now, as a producer, I mean, when you come in, are you in charge of production, promotion? Is it audio production, or is it you are like, if I wanted to hire you to help produce the DJ Sessions podcast, is that something I would come to you and say, Jesse, let's sit down, let's get a game plan on, let's go forward? Is that the type of production you're doing with podcasts?
So what I love about it as somebody who's got a passion for marketing and a passion for analytics and strategy is when I'm hired, a lot of, in music, we all know a great song is the best marketing tool, but with a podcast, the majority of the marketing tool is the product. So you need more than just that product, but understanding what makes that podcast tick and what will make it really good will do the majority of work that will get it, because truly, since podcast doesn't have like playlist discovery, it really has bad discovery even for guests. It's all your social media strategy and your guest strategy or your plot strategy. So I try to determine what those are, do best practices, and then I work on the marketing, the strategy, the whole 9 yards. I read the analytics reports. Like when I get done with this, I have, a 2,000 word analytic diagnosis for one of the podcasts I'm working on of what we're seeing, what we can change, what we can optimize, what we can do. And that appeals to all sides of my brain. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah. And after being somebody who's been podcasting for 17 years now, we started out, we're a video show, and podcasts started out as primarily MP3 files. Excuse me. I'm gonna have to take a cue from you from one of your shows and keep a bottle of water right here.
It's crucial.
But been podcasting for so many years and seeing the rise of podcasts go from audio podcasts to video podcasts, and there was still kind of this background niche thing that people weren't really into. I mean, when I say weren't really into, everything I kind of goes up on a curve, as things start to get more popular. A couple years ago, that curve kind of just got broken and went 90 degrees straight up and over, and everyone jumped online. Not only that, they started doing live streaming as well. And you mentioned you were working with Atlantic, and they kind of shut down or put a hold on their podcasting division, which it's very strange to me that they would stop a medium in the rise of a medium with all their reach and what they had for marketing. What was that like for you in the podcast industry? Just kind of jump up. I mean, I think they said the numbers podcasters doubled or tripled
in the pandemic. Yeah, basically the week that in the week that they shut it down. Yeah, there's a very interesting thing that people don't always take into account. Atlantic is a place filled with tons of brilliant people, but everybody also only has so many resources. And I think everybody got a little scared in those early weeks and thought about how they're going to devote their resources. And all of a sudden, doing this experimental podcast thing wasn't really their gig anymore. Coincidentally, at the time, my boss had been changing jobs, so I think they didn't want to hire the position quite yet. And but they're back in the game. I mean, every major label is now back in the game. I mean, the real joke is everyone and their mother has a podcast network these days. Hence why, like I run for the production for 4 different media companies podcasts that are major multi-million-dollar media companies, and there's a ton of new growth, a ton of new interest in the market, and that's going to keep going. I mean, it's always funny because, like, as you're saying with data, it's like there's this certain thing, and people are like, "Oh, it's inevitable. Everybody's going to do it." It's like, yes, it will cap at some point. There's some point it's not for them, and but we're still going to see a ton more growth in this, and I even see it in what I talk to people's consumption about is that, like, when people are saying like, oh, Netflix is starting to die, it's like Netflix just finally got adjusted for that people are taking in other streaming sites and that they're also taking in podcasts instead of putting on TV in the background.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Hence why Netflix has a podcast department now.
And it was interesting. I was in an interview a couple of weeks ago, and it blew me away because we try to distribute everywhere, and hopefully there's new podcasters listening to this because we're in the DJ business or we're in the music business. And one of the things we always told DJs back in the day when they would come into our studio and be in our live show, part of the package they would come by paying us. Everyone used to think we were a pay to play show. It's like, no, you're paying us for studio time to come in and produce your podcast series that we would set up for you that you could tell your fans and people to subscribe to and get your weekly episode like that. And people didn't still catch on to the idea of it at that time. And this is only 2009, 2010. So they weren't really hip to it. And now seeing everyone jump online going, wow, I can do that. Wow, I can subscribe to it. But one of the biggest things is I read recently that Spotify had bought Anchor.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're allowed to do on Anchor is insane.
Yeah,
with music licensing and DJing sets.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. It just happened in April this year. That's what I understand.
No.
Was it a while ago?
Yeah, no, it's longer than that.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, I guess.
Yeah, they've been implementing more parts of Anchor into their system, but yeah, I think they've had Anchor for about 2 years now.
Okay, I guess what was new to me was the fact that we could get videos into Anchor, and
that's
Anchor
new.
would put the videos over to Spotify. And now we can put our video podcast into Spotify.
Yep.
I took one of our episodes a couple weeks ago with Miri Ben-Ari, famous violinist, like very famous. I put that in there. After I uploaded, I went into Spotify's algorithm, went Miri Ben-Ari. It pulled up her album, pulled out some songs, and then said episodes performed it, and we listed right there at top. I was like, yeah.
No, I know it's
like,
really is amazing how much of a marketing thing is, and like what's also cool, and like I tell musicians this all the time is like the best thing you can be doing to network with people is bring them into your network. So like host a Music Plus talk show, play both of your music in it, play some songs you both like take 15 minutes beforehand, plan it out just like you and I did before this interview, and have a quick conversation, make sure the audience gets a good experience, but then you're going to show up in their search and they're going to show up in your search and you're both going to grow. And like, it's amazing because this opportunity is awesome, but musicians are not taking advantage of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it would be from a DJ's perspective. Maybe it isn't. Maybe I'm trying. I'm not a DJ, even though I play one on live streams. It's kind of an inside joke with me and my crew. But, a DJ, they can set up their rig. They can get some cameras. and they can kind of hit go time on OBS and start streaming, get restream, pump it out to wherever they want to. Well, mainly Twitch nowadays because everyone's shutting down for copyright, and that's a whole nother subject we can go into coming down the line. But you know, when you got to put a band together, you got to bring 4 musicians together, and then you got to run the audio through a board and make sure the audio is going through and the vocals aren't too hot, the guitar isn't too hot, the drums are and all that. It could become a very, very big production for an independent band to do live stream. And now somebody has to be a video engineer too, you know, and an audio engineer on top of that. But I do see the rise of the independent musician. And this is a nice thing. We were talking I was just mentioning a few seconds ago about copyright, where that independent musician can take full advantage of making a podcast because they own the content that they're producing. And they can go on Twitch, they can leave those video on demands up, they can put it out to YouTube, Facebook, you know, Twitch, wherever they want it to reside, and not have to worry about getting struck down for copyright violations, you know, and that it can be a big hurdle for, you know, in the DJ world where they're playing other people's music, but in the in the independent music world where they're creating their own content, it's kind of a huge thing. And you're right. Do you expect to see a shift with independent? And when I say independent artists, I mean, if you have the one person and they're singing into the microphone, playing on the guitar or doing the keyboard, I've seen numbers beyond numbers on Twitch, on live streaming, where they're making a career, they're making a living, and people are buying those, you know, they're buying the bits, they're subscribing to their shows. And how have you seen the industry as podcasting, though? Have people embraced really the Patreon, the subscription-based model, the, you know, pay-per-view model? I don't see pay-per-view being used too much yet. I mean, I consider a subscription on Twitch is kind of a pay-per-view model.
Yes,
totally. Pay-per-view model that they can own themselves, because Twitch does take love you, Twitch. Don't lose my featured partnership because I say this, but you know, you take 50% of what's coming into the artist, whereas some of these other pay-per-views can give you a little bit more revenue stream. Do you see that happening with a lot more artists when they take control of their brand to start saying, I'm going to pay-per-view on my site? Is that something coming down the pipeline? I think what's interesting is, you know, unfortunately, the biggest thing is, unless you're a musician who has a rabid fan base, it's very hard to change people's behaviors they already accept. So like right now, the behavior that we accept the most as musicians is kind of like the idea that, like, or I'm sorry, consumers accept that for musicians to do is like, I'm going to pay you, and then I'm going to get something either before it drops to the rest of the world, or something that is literally exclusive to subscribers. So for example, Spiritbox, who I would argue is the biggest breakout metal band of the last 2 years, they, like, for example, just were selling access to their live chats because people wanted to connect with them so bad, and they did very well with that. I work on a Patreon, funny enough, with Zach Cirillo, who I was talking about, who I did Off the Record with, who was the teenager, became me. Kevin Devine is probably one of the coolest Patreons there is, and what he does is he does 2 songs a month in a live stream. The fans choose the live stream. You only get access to it if you're paying the Patreon. And then he does these 2 songs. I end up mixing and mastering them. And then the crazy, cool thing that he does is at the end of every year, he presses vinyl of that. And the only people who can buy it are the people who were in the fan club. Or in the Patreon, I should say. And so, you know, you get this totally exclusive thing from him that, you know, unless you've been supporting, and, you know, at $5 a month, we know that that's not really that much money. I mean, obviously that's different for everybody, but $60 for the artist you love for an entire year of content and then access to that vinyl, you know, that's a pretty cool thing when you have a diehard fan base. Absolutely. That's one of the first things I implemented with the DJ sessions. This is years ago, was our membership, you know, and you could come in, and for $50 a year or $4 a month, you get access to our content, you get access to our shows, you get access, and there would only be membership only shows, and you had to be a member for 3 months. You couldn't just buy a membership day of and say, I'm a member, let me go to the show. You know, we'd say you couldn't come into the show, or we could do meet and greets with artists, or, you know, special chat rooms or shout outs, depending on the level and tier. We kind of implemented on the back end on our own internal Patreon kind of thing. And, those merch giveaways, it goes up the tiers for what you want to do. But, that just is another way that artists can monetize in the off seasons. I think a lot of monetization ideas were found over the last couple of years that people just said, wait a second, I got 25,000 people on my Instagram. I got 100,000 people following me over here. If I push a button and start doing that exact same thing, I'll release 2 tracks and a live stream. One of our artists, Avi Invasion, it kept him alive doing his show with his fan base. And he does the same thing, like promising a track and other special things that he does. I think it's an awesome form that I think is still going to keep growing. And I was listening to your latest, is it Muse Formation?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't want to say Muse Formation, but I figured it was music. And I was listening to the latest one from 615, and somebody in there, I think, had asked about NFTs. Yeah, and I know that's been such a hot topic and a hot thing. I know there's a little bit of a dip in the market right now, but I have an interview scheduled up and coming with one of the first NFT record labels that has been created. And I wanted to kind of get your take a little bit on where you see the future of NFTs going. And I know it's not there seem to be some overnight successes and people talking about making 6-figure incomes and doing all this awesome stuff. And now it's kind of like, poof, but that's not the future of Web3 or of W3 and where it's going and how NFTs can play such a big thing in the music industry. Or is it going to be kind of we did an NFT project and it didn't work so well. Where do you see the future of NFTs going?
So what I like to tell everybody, because it's the most recent example of this, is NFTs are going to be a lot like the QR codes. So when QR codes came out in 2010, I can remember Odd Future, who were arguably the coolest, hip, most exciting group to come out in forever, go on Jimmy Fallon, and they hold a QR code up and everyone makes fun of them the next day. And then everybody who does things with QR codes are totally fucking lame. They're just like, everything's like just bad. Everyone's using it in a terrible way. No one's having a success. I'm getting emails from people like, I put QR codes on my album cover. Only 10 people have clicked the link, yet my album sold 10,000 copies. And I'm like, no one's adopting that technology yet. Then we get this pandemic and everything changes. And now we're delighted to scan a menu and look through our phone. So NFTs right now are going through their crash and burn, ha 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 phase. NFTs are some part of the future. Where I predict we will have a big thing is that people are going to be able to own songs, own experiences, own logos and things like that. But right now, the fools have rushed in, and unfortunately, because I've made one of the most popular YouTube videos on NFTs and music, it means my inbox is literally flooded with the stupidest ideas I've ever seen and saying, will you come on board and be our mascot? And my assistant writes, absolutely not. But what will happen, and there needs to be a lot of, the other thing I took an angle on is because these are very, the word I'm looking for is the uncharted territory type of thing. There's not good contracts about what to do with NFTs yet. So legal precedent needs to be set for tons of things. And the thing I explained to everybody is that, like, what you risk when you put your song up, your album up as an NFT is some rich kid, son of a lawyer, is going to buy your album for a ridiculous amount of money. And then they're going to say, cool, I own this. And then they're going to go over your rights. They're going to sell it to a commercial because their friend is in a startup. And then that startup's that you drink the blood of children. You're like, wait, why is my song for this children drinking blood business? What the hell is this ruining my career? I didn't sign this over. Turns out that kid did. Now you sue each other for 10 years. And so there's all this legal precedent that needs to still be worked out, because otherwise you can be the person who has all sorts of different things go wrong. But once that stuff is started to work out, once the lawyers dot the T's or dot the I's, cross the T's on all the contracts, we will be in a great place. What I really like about them is any time, and there's been so many of these startups in the 13 years I've been covering this stuff, that come along like, let you invest in a band. We'll let you buy stock in a band. But there's funny thing is like, there's a lot of these slavery laws and that kind of don't allow things like that to really actually exist. And like, you really can't, there's never been a really solid way that if I turned to you and I was like, I believe in you, go make music. Here's $10,000, but I own 4% of you. That's not legal. There's no way that holds up in court. This has been proven a million times. But NFTs allow you that if, let's say you sign a contract that say, this is my logo for the next 2 years. The era of Incel Hypebeast, my fake band, will only have this for 2 years. You own that logo, the only copy of that logo. There will only be one of one. That person now has something of real value that they can always own for as long as you're growing. They get worth in you. So that's a huge opportunity for investors who believe in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's phenomenal because we were looking at entering into that industry, and it's like, what would we produce as an NFT? And the one thing we looked at is we have over 2,300 episodes that we've produced over the years, and we were looking at making NFTs of our episodes that fans could then buy or say, oh, I own the NFT of this famous artist that I love and I'm a fan and I paid my whatever they paid for it. We'd make it accessible. And you just brought up a good point there. What if somebody says, I own that show?
Yeah.
And I'm going to go sell it off to Baby Bloodsuckers or whatever it is.
yeah.
Baby Bloodsuckers puts on a site and I don't have any rights to that. And that's one of the things that even on our site, when a DJ comes and plays on our show, they sign a whole release form. We're all shit over here. And I have some DJs that come back sometimes and they're like, well, we give them 2 ways they can share the show. And I want to go back to QR codes, by the way, in a sec, because
please
really
do.
Funny there. But they bring it up and they're like, okay, I could share the free link off your website, or I could pay $75 for a licensed copy of it. And they come back and say, I'm not going to pay you to play on your show. I go, okay, well, then you can share the free links. And they go, no, I'm not going to pay you to be on the show. I go, then you can share the free links. They don't understand. I'm licensing a copy because if they go out there and they go start working for Baby Bloodsuckers, I want to have the rights to pull that episode back.
Yep,
No, you can't use that anymore. That's not what we license this to you for. We have the rights to that to pull it back. And, those are usually younger musicians that are starting up that don't go out and figure out the legal ease of the industry. Yeah. Hence why you had all the people bitching and moaning in the early days of 2020 about, why doesn't Facebook pay for all the rights to music? Why doesn't Amazon pay for all the rights? Why doesn't YouTube pay? They're billion-dollar companies. They could pay for the rights. It's like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Okay. There's rule. And when you get into the depth of it, people go, oh, okay, this is a headache to me now. And I don't want to know that. I just want to play music. But it was very interesting. You brought up the ownership of that. And yeah, I'd like that you touched on that. And thank you. But one thing I did want to say is you brought up QR codes. And I was a very early adopter of QR codes in 2010, and people thought I was loony. Like, nobody got it. I'm like, just point your phone at this thing and it does this thing and it takes you right to the website. And yeah, I got vindicated 10 years later.
Yeah.
But not because society went in a positive, good way. Something really major happened to make that shift happen. And now everyone's like, oh, QR codes. I got it. Like you said, go to your favorite restaurant. Go, don't touch this. It's like, oh, cool. You know? But you have also, some of your accomplishments, you've read a couple books.
Yes, I have.
And one of the books I wanted to talk about, I'm sure you've talked about it ad nauseum, is Get More Fans. And that book there, is this, my first question for you about the book is that a book that can apply along many different lines of the music industry, or is it genre specific? Or could a DJ pick that up and say, okay, I want to get more fans? Can any musician pick it up and get more fans? Is it it, I want to be an influencer. How do I get more fans?
That I draw the line at, but so here's the thing that I tried to do with that book. And after the next edition is the 10th edition. So I feel like I've done pretty damn well with it over the years, but what the idea of that book is instead of ultra specific things, it's here's the lay of the land and how things work. Like, just as I was talking about, like, behaviors of that, like, consumers only will do this. It basically teaches you every aspect of the business, how it basically, like, what the ground rules are. Whereas, like, Donald Passman's everything you want to know about the music business, that's like law. Yeah. This is actually the marketing and how you get fans and how you monetize your business. I just give the overall, here's every single option. And I make it so that it literally covers every genre in that aspect. My YouTube channel, I try to gear it a little bit more towards specific. So for example, I'll make a video and I'll explain, here's the cheat code for a certain genre. Here's what works. Here's what not to spend your money on in this genre. Because those rules also shift. Like, there's been two drastic shifts in the last 2 years, which is that 2 years ago when I started my YouTube channel, playlists were the biggest game in town. But now features, remixes, and collaborations are having what I call artist page visibility, where when you work with another artist, you end up on their page, and if they get on a playlist, your name is there. You get all this visibility, and that is the biggest music marketing opportunity we've ever had in the history of music. And then TikTok, those two things have totally changed everything in the last 2 years. So the rules have been totally rewritten now on what matters in the game. So the YouTube is for more specific and more fast moving, because I only update Get More Fans every year. So I try to keep it more what I call like a little bit more of a broad overview.
Mm-hmm. And then you have a book that, would you say it's an accompaniment to
Yes.
Get More Fans, Processing Creativity?
Yep.
The tools and practices and habits. And I like this, used to make music you're happy with.
Yes.
I talk to producers all the time, and I was actually just on with Hartento Davini. He's over in Holland, and big producer, produced for Armada and State of Trance.
Hell yeah.
And he kind of just said, I just had a kid a couple years ago, and now what I do is I do things that make me happy, not driving for the industry. And I have a much more successful career. And I'm not trying to become Armin van Buuren. I'm not trying to become Tiesto or David Guetta. I'm living for the happiness of this. Would you say both those books are definitely, put them on your shelf, get them, read them together?
Yeah. So what's interesting is I don't know that everybody needs to read either one, but a lot of people should do it. So what the idea of Processing Creativity is I see so many people, so many musicians, if you think this way. I've been lucky enough in my career that I've gotten to be in the studio with some of the biggest artists in the entire world. And then I've gotten to be in the studio with literally 17-year-old kids who have no idea what they're doing. So I see the vast landscape of what people don't get. And the biggest thing people don't get is that they tell themselves a story that this person was writing it to be a hit. They were just trying to make a hit. It's like what actually happens when you're in the room with hits is it's people making the music they want to hear. Their taste just happens to align with what the public wants. That's also why people fall off so fast, because if your taste evolves away from what the public wants, or even if the public evolves away from you. So let's say, you are making a sound that goes out of style, but you're like, hey, that's what feels emotionally powerful to me. Well, they all know they have no choice but to do that. And here's the other thing. It's like, like the example I like to use is like a band like Blink-182. When they're 50 years old singing about dogs' dicks, you're like, guy, come on. It was weird when you were like 29 singing about being immature, but we bought it. You seemed kind of immature. But you got kids who are older than you were when you started this band at this point. Give it a rest, Chief. Come on. And so the inauthenticity is something people hear. I think we're living in a time where we have the whole public, and even the stupidest people in our public, we all have authenticity meters that detect so much. Now, some people, I think their authenticity meters a little warped for other things, but no matter what, you can tell. Like the thing I like to say is like what Donald Trump, who I'm not a fan of, appealed to people is he's an authentic Fox News grandpa, just like them. And Hillary Clinton did not seem human to people, and she did not connect with people, and that changed the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely, from a podcast perspective, we won't go into politics.
Yeah.
But from a podcast, online perspective, that was one of the things that, I saw so many people jumping online and they hadn't built their brand. They hadn't built anything. And all they were going off of was their social media or their fan page saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, not understanding how the Facebook algorithms, Instagram algorithms, and how that all worked out. And then getting very disenfranchised because they didn't have an authentic online brand built for them to know. And then they're up against all this other competition with everyone saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. I mean, this is like, it'd be like if all of a sudden all the major networks, NBC, Netflix, Hulu, all of them just went and had all their major libraries that they have right now and saying, look at us and watch this all at one time. And they still do that. I mean, they're Comcast and Dish Cable. They're all trying to get our attention to get those subscriptions, but there's so much clutter is where do you buy and what do you watch and where do you go? And luckily there's DVRs out there. And the cool thing about podcasts, you can always come back and watch them later. But when everyone was trying to live stream, if you're choosing the time to go live stream, when 100 other artists that are top name artists around the world that you cannot go see them perform live, what do you think the chances are that of that other person's live stream being watched? And you can't watch 2 live streams at the same time.
No, you definitely cannot.
I mean, you can lurk on a few of them over here and stuff, but you can't watch them and ingest them at the same time. And then you run into the whole, well, okay, Insomniac's running their huge live streams and they can put their shows up because they have a partnership with Twitch and all their licensing's taken care of. You have the DJ sessions, which we can do that too, in our way that we've worked it out. But then they put up their episodes and then they'd have all the red lines in them blocking out the audio and they'd get disenfranchised because they never spent time authenticating their brand. I like the way you use that word. I believe that's the word you use. I
mean, I think the biggest mistake people make when you've got exactly the dichotomy right, which is that look at me is bad. Here's a reason to look at me is good. But my other thing that I think people really miss about authenticity is it goes right back to the same thing, is that people mistake that an artist, they're like, oh, their team came up with this thing and then they made this contrived personality. It's like, what actually usually happens as someone who's been in those meetings a million times is like, we look at the artist, we look at what they're authentically in, and then we think about how to do it as good as possible. Now, when you're in a room with a bunch of smart people, it's like, I know that voice. When you're in a room with those people who know how to ask the right questions and do development, you get to really strong, authentic branding. Mm-hmm. But that branding is always reflected of something that's authentic to a person. Like, a good example we love to use, it's like, the greatest thing that ever happens to an artist is they break up. Because now we have material for press releases. We have material for new photos of you out dating and that we slip out to social media. We have a new song that you're going to easily be able to write and people are going to wonder how you're feeling about. Everything's going great for everyone but your broken heart.
Yeah, and I think that's a definite journey that I've talked with some of my DJs all the time. They come in and say, what do you want to do here? And that's why the qualification of coming on our show or being one of our resident DJs is show that you have a passion for music and make sure you want to have fun. There's a couple little things that we have you do in the back end, but really you should be doing these already if you want to be an artist. And I don't make it too hard for anyone to want to come on board. And we're getting ready to start our own label here.
Oh, hell yeah.
In the next year. And that's going to be a very interesting endeavor. After the first year, we're building a lot of stuff up but we're really super excited for that. But that's my first endeavor of kind of having to get into that A&R world and listening to music. What do we use? What is our sound going to be like? Where do we go? So I think definitely I'm going to be picking up your books and also sharing them and saying to my crew, get these books. Cause the ones that want to take it to that next level. Some are cool just playing at home and having fun and playing in the local nightclubs. Some want to go, how do I get to that next level and get me bookings around the world? That can definitely happen. And now all this that you've been doing, the books, the production, you launched Podstream Studios.
Yes.
And is this a full service studio or is this a studio that people can come into and rent time or rent studio time from you to produce their podcast? Tell us a little bit about that and how that got started.
So Podstream Studios is a partnership with my friend Chris Colbert of DCP Entertainment. DCP is a wonderful POC driven content network that does a lot of phenomenal podcasts. They win tons of Webby Awards for their series, and they really are just make amazing content. So they needed a place to tape, but we wanted to also open a commercial studio. So we found a place that is literally the centermost building in Times Square that looks right out on the whole thing. And so you're able to go in there, you're able to live stream, or you're able to podcast right from there with like the best views ever on your camera and your live stream. And you're able to, also conveniently be by where everybody is taping to do press that day. Like, a lot of time what we have is somebody it's much easier to get a guest if you're telling them, hey, you're doing Good Morning America at 9, and then you're doing another show at 11. At 10:15, you can come by here, do 10 minutes real quick with the host. We're a block away. You do your makeup, you're in, you're out. See you later. So a lot of our creators love it for that it's just like, it's super solid and right there in the center of it all. But yeah, it's been going. We unfortunately opened right as the pandemic was starting to happen, but things have now gotten to be very great over there. Hence why I have to podcast from home right now.
It's amazing that, it's a few years back when we first started, I had my first studio because we started in my living room, and then we moved it to my bedroom, and that was the new studio. And you can see those videos to this day. And at one time, my ex-girlfriend, who's one of my best friends now, she came into the live stream. She's like, that's not a new studio. That's your bedroom. I know that room. I'm like, oh, thanks. And my bed was literally a foot and a half away from the DJ booth and everything. But getting my new studios, at the end of the day, I would do my shows and I'd go, I'm flipping off the lights and this place is collecting dust.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what if I opened it up and started producing shows for other podcasters or live streams for other people who didn't have the live streaming camera set up, multicam, all that set up. And like I said, it was $50 an hour is what I was charging. Wow. I'd come in, and it was ITV Live was the moniker of the studio name, because that was born off our broadcast television series. And ITV Live was producing Multiverse News, or ITV Live was producing Skewed and Reviewed. We were going to go full-fledged with, I always wanted to own my own studio where other people that wanted to do shows come in, sit down, do their show, bounce out, next show, and actually stream that live as a full-on channel in addition to our programming that we had as well. It went through its course and reiteration. Different things happen in life, and turned out to not be a full focus of what I wanted to do, but it did lead to us creating our mobile studio. I don't know if you got a chance to go to our website or not and check out our the DJ Sessions. It was the ITV Live mobile studio. Now it's the DJ Sessions mobile studio. We basically took you see the glass box trucks that drive around.
Of course, yeah.
We took one of those glass box trucks in 2010 and made it into a mobile studio so we could pull it up to events, have everything in the back, lights, camera, action, and we could stream live from it. Basically, we made a news truck and be out of these major events and doing that. The reiteration of that now is we can stream live driving around downtown Seattle with a sound system on the back of the truck. That is a concert grade sound system brought to you by Mackie, by the way. Got to get sponsors. But we have two 18-inch woofers, two 15-inch woofers, two 15-inch tower. Come on, Darren, you're not an audio guy, but you should know what these things, PAs, and a sound system. Just you hear the truck coming down. We got DJs. You put people in the back of it. We drive around. We live stream. We podcast it. That became one of our new kind of focal things that we do, just to do that different kind of thing. But I always did miss being back in the studio when you get to flip those switches on, set it up, do the show, and you're done and you're out, and everything's done online. Your podcast is done. Your live stream is done. If I wanted to come out there and rent those studios, I could do that, right?
You 100% can. We literally are just like you walk in, you hire us, and we have techs there ready to go. Or like, for example, the person there that's right now there didn't need techs, and they're just doing their thing, shooting a documentary. It's a really cool thing. But man, that sounds like such a good idea. What you got going out there? I definitely have to check that out. Yeah,
it's on our website. Check out the mobile session. It's a fun thing. We just launched a division down in Arizona as well. We brought a truck down there so we can do this have kind of a base and get it out to LA and Vegas as well.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, you're going to do great with that.
Yeah, we just drove the truck. We just drove the truck a few months ago from Seattle down to Arizona and back up through Vegas. And we're on the Vegas Strip for 5 days doing shows, and then brought it back up to Seattle. I'm like, I'm not making that trip ever.
Yeah, as somebody who's done some touring in their life, I would not want to do that again.
Yeah, my buddy was like, dude, just put it on the back of a truck next time and fly down. I'm like, good idea. Or maybe we just buy one and keep it down here, you know. But it was funny because just a little side note, when I first got the idea for it, I had a plug on one of Kevin Smith's podcasts. It was like one of his first 10 Smodcasts, and we did this plug, and the thing I wanted to highlight was this series we came up called The DJ Sessions Presents The Freeway Sessions, the fastest moving DJ show in the world. Huh. And one of the plugs was, with speeds of reaching up to 60 miles an hour with DJs playing live in the back of this truck. We've done it a few times, but yeah, just the idea of, like you said earlier, about standing out, making something different, but making sure you love what you're doing or you're happy with what you're doing, because that'll translate. And, you know, if you're in it for the money and you're not getting the money, you're not going to be happy. If you're in it for the fame or the success or the downloads or the, you know, that, and you're not getting that, you're not going to be happy. If you just keep doing what you love and you're happy with it, you know, I think that's a great success. If there was a piece of advice other than, you know, going off of your book we were just discussing, what would one piece of advice you could give to an aspiring podcaster out there?
You know, I like music. You need to make what you want to hear. But what's interesting, just like music, you know, the second you're over 4 minutes, if you're going to do a 1 minute intro before your song starts or something, you're going to really have a hard time connecting to the audience. Podcasts need to do similar things. There's certain formatting things that work very well, particularly like, here's a great example, is the New Abnormal. We do this thing that is now a very big formula for success for people, which is you have a dynamic of two people, and then you bring in what we call the variable, which is the interview. And then you do a segment at the end that is like a reoccurring thing. That tends to be a format that audiences tune into. It kind of covers what a lot of people want to hear, but particularly like what people like to hear is that, whereas then, you know, if you're doing a more narrative documentary style thing, you know, there's all these formatting rules. You know, no one wants, like, here's a great example, like YouTube is particularly showing this because I think YouTube is actually moves a little bit faster than podcasts. Is every YouTube video, like 5 years ago, it would have the thing where, like, you'd have this intro video, like kind of like what we had here. But whereas now, it would be, you do a hook, then you'd have that, and then you'd do the body of the video. But now everybody has learned that YouTube punishes you so bad if you slow down for 10 seconds. So you can't have that hook anymore because you look at your YouTube graph and it hockey sticks downwards. And so, like, everybody's learning that. It's the same thing with podcasts. Like, every podcast is learning that, like, you can have a 10-second intro where you kind of state the mission statement of the podcast, and then you better rip and go very fast for the next X amount of time. Yeah, definitely. Having a little bit of experience doing this for a while, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and you get that dead air or you get that downtime, and it's like, okay, or they don't know where they're going, or even just scripting, or just having a set rule, or knowing, having your questions. I think I saw a little nifty tool out there that you can buy, and it's a deck of podcast questions. Oh, that's funny. Just go through and grab 10 questions out of the deck and go boop, 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 and keep it funny. Keep it going. I was like, that's a cool little tool. That is a good idea. You know, yeah, I wish I got the patent rights to that. But you know, I want to say thank you, Jesse, for coming on the show today, and the information you shared is priceless. If people wanted to go out there and find out more about what you do, your services, everything, where could they go to find that out? Yep. JesseCannon.com is the best place to learn more about me, and at Jesse Cannon on all the socials. Awesome. And is there anything you want to say to our DJ Sessions fans before we let you get going? This was super fun to talk. I can't wait to look up your mobile truck. It sounds so fun. Oh, well, we got the mobile truck, we got the VR nightclubs, we got the mobile app. Oh, by the way, we're launching to Roku, Amazon Fire, Google Play, and Apple TV here in the next few weeks. Oh, I love it. Super excited about it. And the new Spotify channel as well. We're super excited about that. But thank you again for coming on. I'm definitely going to talk with you outside of the show, because you're definitely a resource, a wealth of information. And again, thank you for coming on the series. Really appreciate you having me. Absolutely, Jesse.
On that note, don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com. Find us on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call it, the socials, or just go to our website, thedjsessions.com. I'm Darren, coming to you from Seattle, Washington, with Jesse Cannon, all the way in from NYC for the virtual sessions. And remember, on the DJ sessions, the music never stops.